Many great pieces of art across all mediums challenge their audiences. It might be as simple and harmless as a big budget blockbuster which mines some escapist fun from throwing you into the shoes of Peter Parker or Tony Stark and prompts you to ask, what would I do as a superhero? Although, let's face it, Kick-Ass and Super already answered that one for most of us. At the other end of the scale, movies can be an emotional endurance test. This could range from a gory bit of horror which makes you wonder how much physical trauma you'd be able to endure before packing it in and letting Jason Voorhees take the win, to a bleak drama which forces you to consider impossible decisions, Sophie's Choice style. But even more than movies, television shows are uniquely positioned to force viewers to answer impossible questions, as their episodic structure and longer runtime ensure that the series can interrogate a decision from every angle, and linger for as long as the creators want on the effects of every call. With that in mind, it's time to look at the times TV forced you to consider questions for which there's no right answer, and see what decision the characters and audience went with. I'm Kirsten from What Culture, and these are 10 TV shows that made you answer impossible questions. Number 10, The XFiles. Would you sacrifice one life for another? By the time its 8th season rolled around, the 90s conspiracy mystery mega hit The X-Files was starting to struggle with attracting an audience. Yes, the central duo of David Duchovny's zealous Bill Mulder and Gillian Anderson's hardened cynic Scully were as magnetic as ever, but the monster of the week plots were straining, and the show's overarching mythos had become nigh on impenetrable for anyone less than obsessive. The ongoing beef between mercurial Russian agent Krychek and assistant FBI director Skinner, however, managed to reignite the show's propulsive mystery with a vicious moral question that left viewers struggling to make the right call. Krychek offers Skinner the antidote required to keep Mulder alive, as the agent is comatose and rapidly failing after an alien abduction. But there's a catch, isn't there always? Skinner's end of the bargain is that he has to end the life of Agent Scully's unborn child in exchange for the antidote. Don't worry, dear watcher, the venerable director unplugs Mulder, discovering when he does that life support was actually all that kept his alien-acquired sickness alive, and the audience is able to reassure themselves that they too wouldn't have offed Scully's unborn offspring in favour of a heartthrob and all-round good guy, Mulder's prolonged existence. Number 9, Dexter. What if your brother was a serial killer? Showtime's drama/thriller Dexter was a runaway hit upon its debut in 2006, with its killer premise, a serial killer who targets other serial killers, managing to satisfy viewers' bloodlust while also allowing them to feel relatively morally upright. And the show did manage to interrogate the morality of its protagonist throughout its 8-season run, with Michael C. Hall's central turn never offering any easy answers or banal platitudes which excused the troubled protagonist's twisted idea of vigilante justice. Well, until the widely derided series finale, that is. But there was a harder moral question at the core of Dexter's premise, and it wasn't the one faced by the titular protagonist. As tough cop and Dexter's sister Deborah Morgan, Jennifer Carpenter put in a career-best performance, but it wasn't until after the show's lackluster 6th season that the series posed its most troubling moral quandary. What if your brother was a serial killer? When Deborah walks in on Dexter disposing of his latest victim, the smooth-talking hero convinces her this is a one-off occurrence, but the return to form 7th season centres around Morgan's struggle with her complicity in Dexter's crimes. Admirably, the show offers no easy answers and leaves the viewer wondering how they'd respond when faced with the ultimate test of family loyalty versus moral responsibility. Number 8, The Walking Dead. Your child's limb or the lives of your friends. The Walking Dead has, for its entire 10-season run, essentially been a series of brutal, morally challenging decisions punctuated by the occasional zombie attack to lighten the mood, or liven up a season where nothing happens for episodes at a time. But the uncompromisingly dark post-apocalyptic horror drama outdid itself with the arrival of monstrous villain / now sort of hero, Negan, ably played by former comedian Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Negan delighted in torturing the few remaining survivors of the series, both physically and emotionally, forcing them into impossible binds where no decision was worth the outcome. Most famous among these was Negan's demand that our protagonist / shattered shell of a man, Rick Grimes, sever the arm of his own teenage son / portrait of innocence destroyed Kyle, or watch as Negan killed his entire group of struggling survivors. Sure, Rick didn't end up having to go through with it, but this screwed up thing to ask nonetheless proved that the show's 7th season was unafraid of posing nightmarish scenarios for its viewers to ponder over at the water cooler the next day. Number 7. Pushing Daisies. What if you could raise the dead? With a catch. This little seen but much loved cult curio was cancelled after only 2 seasons, though fortunately this blow hasn't stopped series creator Brian Fuller from moving on to bigger things such as the critically acclaimed Hannibal and ambitious Neil Gaiman adaptation American Gods. Despite being a light-hearted mystery series with a sweet romantic core, the very premise of Pushing Daisies proposed a difficult moral conundrum which fans of the show still struggle with, as it combined supernatural magic with difficult real-life consequences. You see, protagonist Ned is a pretty unassuming guy and exceptional pie maker, with one odd skill. He can bring the dead back to life via touch, but only for a minute, otherwise another person will die to take their place. Oh, and if he touches them a second time, they're dead for good. This is a pretty complicated place to inhabit as a hero, but it's made more complex when Ned's childhood sweetheart is murdered, means he ends up inadvertently offing a funeral home director when he revives her, and can never touch her again. It's a bittersweet idea which still leaves audiences wondering how they'd handle the moral and practical implications of this curse / superpower, long after the show wrapped up its brief run. Number 6. Once Upon a Time, your chances of children or your mother-in-law's life. The What If Disney's stable of characters lived in Twin Peaks mystery series is probably not one which was an obvious addition to a list which is most full of morally grey protagonists from very adult offerings such as Dexter, The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad. But believe it or not, this ABC family hit did pose a pretty difficult moral quandary for viewers during its contentious 2nd season, a run which saw the show move into darker territory than its first. Series star Snow White is left missing out on any chance of having children when a nefarious villain tricks her into imbibing a potion, and her mother-in-law soon falls victim to a similar ruse, drinking the same poison which, at her age, just leaves her at death's door instead. Much better. The day seems saved when the pair travel to a magic lake whose water will cure them, but in an awkward moment for the ages, Snow White's betrothed has only gone on and inadvertently emptied the lake of all but one sup of its elixir. So, who gets the drink? The queen-to-be, ensuring she can provide an heir and is free to be a mother, or her mother-in-law, who has done nothing to deserve this rapidly accelerated death? It's a surprisingly intense conundrum given the show's tone, and signalled a more serious tone for its 2nd season. Number 5. MASH. What would you do to ensure the safety of many? A television spin-off of Nashville-ature Robert Altman's Korean war set dramedy, MASH is an iconic series still listed alongside the likes of The Simpsons as one of TV's most influential and ingenious offerings of the 20th century. The show allowed the sitcom format to address serious, meaningful questions and provided a mainstream voice for anti-war advocacy in the dying years of America's attack on Vietnam, and star Alan Alda ensured that the platform was used to great effect throughout the show's long run. Yes, some critics argue that later seasons were more uneven than the first few, and the show definitely did drag on a bit by the end, but the series finale, still one of the most watched episodes in TV history, posed a moral problem so devastating that it ensured the show will always have a place in television history as a vital, brilliant work. When our hero Hawkeye recounts the story of forcing a Vietnamese woman to silence her squawking chicken during a checkpoint, lest it endanger an entire busload of evacuees, viewers knew something stomach-twisting was coming. The brutal punchline of the scene, which reveals it was actually a baby that Hawkeye told her to smother rather than a chicken, has lost none of its power in the intervening decades, and still leaves audiences struggling with what the right decision would have been in Hawkeye's impossible position. Number 4. Buffy. Would you give up your friend to save your town? Dollhouse creator slash MCU hero Joss Whedon's beloved teen drama slash monster of the week hybrid wasn't averse to putting viewers through the ringer, and some of the show's darker episodes acted as a perfect training ground for the emotional workout that Whedon's later works would be. However, the most pointed moral choice that the show ever threw at the unsuspecting audience was one that the characters themselves faced down without having to actually make the call. When the gang finally acquired a supernatural MacGuffin known as the Box of Gavrok from the villainous Mayor Wilkins, Wilkins took team member Willow hostage in the aptly titled episode Choices. The gang eventually decide they'll forego destroying the box and instead trade it for her safe return, prompting Wesley to try destroying it anyway. Moral arbiter Oz, however, ends up breaking an urn which was needed to destroy the box, leaving everyone else's part in the choice irrelevant. Whilst Oz may have made things easy for the group, the audience is nonetheless left with a discomforting uncertainty as we wonder what we would have done, and whether they've made the right call in the long term.
Number 3. Black Mirror. What would you do to save a child?
Charlie Brooker is famously no fan of easy endings, and the twisted morality tales of his sci-fi anthology series Black Mirror often feature twist endings so cruel that even the writers of The Outer Limits would have to stand back and appreciate their inventive viciousness. That said, a great many of these stories do end up giving their audience a relatively easy out, intentionally or otherwise, as the revelations they contain leave us far less likely to identify with the primary protagonist. Looking at you, White Bear, and Shut Up and Dance. It's rare to find an episode which leaves the viewer wondering what they'd do if left in the main character's shoes, outside of the recent Netflix film Bandersnatch, and even that was built entirely around the gimmick of forcing you into the star's head. However, the show's pilot episode, The National Anthem, did manage to make viewers worldwide question just how they'd handle the dilemma faced by its main character. And folks, said dilemma is a doozy. Our nominal hero is the British Prime Minister, who is charged with doing something unimaginable as a sort of ransom in exchange for the return of a kidnapped princess. Viewers everywhere struggle to answer, would you a pig on live television to save royalty? And the show is too mean to offer an easy out from this one, leaving viewers gobsmacked by the eventual answer. Number 2, Prison Break. Your brother, your freedom, or the love of your life. Never a show to do things by halves, a later season of Prison Break managed to amp up the tension by demanding that the hero, titular jailhouse architect slash Harry Houdini wannabe Michael Schofield, choose between his potential freedom and his long-suffering love interest Sarah. But the show soon twisted the knife by risking the life of his brother too, with Michael ending up having to choose between Sarah, his beloved big bro, and that fleeting shot at freedom. Anyone who recalls the mid-noughts thriller series will know that said brother was Lincoln, the wrongfully accused man around whom the show's eponymous Prison Break and entire subsequent globe-trotting conspiracy unravelling centred. Our hero was forced to decide whether his family or the love who helped him escape prison was his first priority, all the while aware that he could abandon both to death and escape with the evidence that would condemn his captors and tormentors via a handy memory stick. Of course, Michael found a workaround, but the impossible choice was still one that lingered with viewers long after this implausible MacGyver-style plan worked out. Who would you pick, if either? Number 1, Breaking Bad. How far would you go to secure your family's future? Few TV shows can claim a journey as impressive as Vince Gilligan's Breaking Bad. What began as a quirky, blackly comic satire, most notable for recasting Malcolm in the Middle's sad sack dad as a not-to-be-f***ed-with anti-hero, eventually developed into a layered, operatic story of loyalty, violence, redemption, and, most importantly, family. The show's primary crux, however, never evolved the way its shifting tone and broadening scope did over the course of the series. From the barnstorming pilot through to the final season's critically adored finale, the series asked viewers what lengths they would be willing to go to in order to ensure a comfortable, safe life for their family. However, as the show continued, the definition of family shrank as Walt was pitted against his brother-in-law and eventually even his own wife in his pursuit of financial stability for his children. Gradually, the show forced us to wonder what sacrifices were worth their human cost, and which was more important in a society as fractured and safety net free as modern America's, leaving a fortune for your offspring or providing a moral example for them to follow. And that's our list. What do you think was the hardest decision? Leave us a comment below and let us know. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. But for now, I've been Kirsten from What Culture, and I'll see you in the next one.